Conference attendees, please welcome to the stage co-founder of McKay Brothers Quincy Data, Stéphane Titch.
So thanks, and I'm so glad to be here. We do this once a year. We come up and try to explain what we do and what our business is about, and that's what I'll try to do today again. So what we do has been done for thousands of years. So here you can see that this network was built 3,000 years ago to warn the Greeks from the fall of Troy. And fundamentally, nothing has really changed. They use speed of light as propagation. We use speed of light now. We've abandoned fiber to go fast. They had indirection of about a third. So we've divided indirection by a factor of about 10 to the 3 in 3,000 years. So that's good. They had a regeneration latency of about 1,000 seconds. That's the time it takes to light a fire to propagate the signal onward. We've divided that, and we're way under a microsecond. So we've divided that by about 10 to the 10 today. So, and we're pretty close to the limit. So they had a very small bandwidth, and the bandwidth was 1 bit per week, because you really had to reload the system. You had to send a ship on the other side to say the next time you see a fire, that's what it means. So it's really 1 bit per week. And now we're, of the order of 100 megabits, maybe a gigabit. But we've essentially increased the bandwidth by a factor of 10 to the 13. And then they had a data rate which was incredibly small, because they really needed to send the news of the fall of Troy, and it took 10 years to happen. So they had really 1 bit for 10 years. And today, we really send like 10 to 16 bits per second. We increased the data rate by 10 to the 16. So that's a huge change. And the material change is that at the time, the data rate was less than the bandwidth, and now the data rate is more than the bandwidth. And that puts a lot of constraints on what we can do. So what we can do is also defined by how the markets function. And the markets have functioned also for thousands of years. And in medieval time, there was a time of great innovation, and all was about the different rules at the fairs. So they were different fairs, and different fairs had different rules. Some had continuous trading, and some had actually clearing prices. So you would trade during the fair, but there would be one single price at the end of the fair at which the goods were exchanged. And all this was happening in a context of people thinking, what is fair and what is morally acceptable. So that's why I'm putting the little portrait of Leonard de Lessius. He was a Dutch guy. As you know, Dutch guys are very focused on fairness, and he wrote a lot about what was morally acceptable to do. So today, I think we're more focused not really on the morality of things, but more on the efficiency of things. And what we can do, the efficiency, we can try and bring efficiency to the markets, and hopefully that improves the way the market functions. And we think if we do that, that will bring some welfare to the market participants. I wanted to share with you something that I zoomed by on a network in front of my eyes, an incredibly beautiful natural experiment of how improved communications can better the markets and lead to improved welfare. So that's the story of the fish market in India. So on the right-hand side here, and I'm glad you can't really see the fine print, but you can see the price fluctuations of fish markets as a function of time in 3 different regions of Kerala in India. And you can see that there was a complete change of regime from a widely fluctuating price to a reasonably steady price. And what was really interesting in this is that this change came right when cell phone coverage was brought to the ships, and when the captains of the ship could actually call and say to the markets, my hole is big, I'm coming in this hour, and then that reduced dramatically the price fluctuations. And frankly, this is a beautiful example, and this is what we tried to do. So we had our little fish market moment a year and a half ago, and we introduced a new product that I will try and describe for you. But this is, increased welfare by improving communications. So what we did to explain what we did, I have to go a bit in the description of market microstructure. So to do that, let me start with a slide taken from a Eurex presentation. I'm quoting the Eurex presentation here. And the reason I'm doing this is because Eurex is so incredibly detailed in the analysis that they provide of the whole order sending to matching to market data publication sequence. They have nanosecond, sub-nanosecond precision timestamping every place, and they actually publish it. And the real reason I'm using this is because what we do is we really take what participants get at the outside of the market data or the private fill side. We have our own kind of matching engine thing, which is transport to the other side, and our clients use this on the other side to send the orders. So we do the complement of this, essentially. And I'm also using this because their picture was beautiful, and I wanted to reuse part of it without redrawing it. So that's Eurex. And on the other side, in the US, the CME, I would say, has a slightly different approach. The CME is much more nuanced. Eurex is all in for market data first, and the CME is extremely careful about weighing the pros and cons of having private fills or market data first, and they do that in a way that is super thoughtful and sometimes a little cryptic. So they had an announcement a year ago, and that's a really funny announcement in a way. They had something which said critical update, and if you read the critical update, it says, we'll change the latency a little bit on some packets, really shouldn't change anything to market dynamics, you don't have to do anything, but it's still a critical update. And by the way, we're only doing that for ES front month. So when you read this, you're kind of, hey, that's really cryptic. And for us to craft the best products, we have to understand how the markets work. So we have to understand if that changes the dynamics between private fills and public market data, and especially the trade summary messages, which is the most important market data that CME publishes. So let me show you what we do. And I'm obviously reusing the Eurex graph for that to portray what the CME does, because the Eurex graphs are really beautiful. So you can see the market data publishing side here. And our clients consume the G-Link market data. They also get the private fills. On the Quincy side, we only get the market data. We can't get the private fills, obviously, because we don't trade. And we have two networks that go from Chicago to New Jersey. And for the most part of our existence, for the first 8 years, the top line, which is the bandwidth network, was the faster means of getting to New Jersey. And that was the fastest mean because we had quite a bit of processing inside the Quincy data box there, and we didn't think we could do as good a job as our clients. And then it dawned on us that we could actually remove the policer, and we could actually move the processing from the box over there to the radio and actually have a faster path on the market data side. So we created a product called the QFD product, Quincy Fast Data. It's hard to get superlatives. You know, we had extreme, you know, what's more extreme than extreme? Fast, I don't know. But at least that's the fastest, QFD. And that QFD is actually faster for the subset of trade summary messages only. You know, it's not faster for everything, but it's faster than our private bandwidth line. When I say it's faster, really to know it's faster, it really depends on the jitter of the market data publication by the CME. Obviously, if the market data publication has a lot of jitter, somebody's going to get it first and be first. And in that situation, we can never really be the fastest because, you know, we're only 1 over n of our many clients. So to know that I'll be able to be first on that side, I need to measure the edge I have on the bottom path with the jitter of the market data coming from the CME. And that's a fairly expensive experiment because subscribing to G-Link is actually expensive, and there are many G-Links that you should subscribe to if you really wouldn't want to do the full experiment. So what we do first is we do a little bit of a theory of what should happen to get a sense of you know, how many G-Links we should take. So it's a calculation that you can actually do. So if you have a series of Gaussian correlated random variables, which are supposed to represent the arrival times, or at least the difference in arrival times of the different G-links, then you can actually compute the expected value of the max, which is what you would do with you know, taking the fastest packet for every G-link, for every instance of a packet. And what's interesting in this is not, you know, I'm not saying that it's perfectly Gaussian variables and everything, but what's interesting about this calculation is that you can see that by doing 2 G-links, you get about, you know, maybe a third, maybe a bit more of the maximum improvement that you can get. So going from 2 G-links to, say, 10 G-links, you might improve from a third of the total gain to 100% of the total gain that you can aim to have. So armed with that, you know, we can do some experiments and have the order of magnitude of what we should expect in pickup time. And of course here, the units are in units of square root of variance. So it's unitless here, but you have to measure the variance of the arrival times. So we do here the G-link arbitration analysis, and here we plot the difference in arrival time of 2 G-links. It's a fairly simple thing to do. And if you do that, you can see it's not too far from a Gaussian if you look at the difference. If you look at the arrival times themselves, that are not a Gaussian, but what counts is really the difference between 2 G-links. And you can compute the average of the improvement, and the average of the improvement in this case is 16 nanoseconds. Now you go back and you compare the bottom path to the top path, and we have quite a bit more than 30 nanoseconds of improvement on the bottom path. So we're happy we should win almost all the time, and I think we do. So that's what we did. So this thing is really our fish market moment of 1.5 years ago, and we think this changed the dynamics of trading in New Jersey. It changed the dynamics of trading in New Jersey essentially because you don't need to invest in all the G-link arbitration at the CME. Now you can just consume the trade summary message in New Jersey and be on par with the fastest firms that do the arbitration of all the G-links. Of course, you won't have the private fills. That's a separate story. But this side, the public market data, you can get the fastest just by listening to QFD in New Jersey. Our bandwidth offering is still very valuable for all the other signals. And the other thing that we try to do is we try to explain how the bandwidth offering works. So before I go into the bandwidth offering, let me put this graph here, because as we expand our network, every time that we do, we try to think about what we should put first, market data or bandwidth, what should be the fastest. And in making those choices, we're constrained by many things. We're constrained by competition. If we're very close to competition, we're constrained on our choices. We're constrained by the market microstructure. If the market data that we want to send are published after the private fails, like we can't make the market data faster, like we don't have a magic wand. So this exercise is very constrained. But within those constraints, we try to make the market data faster because we think it serves more people and it enables more robust competition in the markets that consume that data. So let me go back now to the bandwidth offering. And in the bandwidth offering, our clients go and they send the packets, and sometimes there's a race to the switch. And what we do is we're FIFO, but saying that you're FIFO, there's always some kind of granularity at which you're FIFO. So we're FIFO, and we're FIFO roughly at 10 nanosecond granularity, which means that if two packets come in separated by more than 10 nanoseconds, then the first one goes first. If packets come in and they're separated by less than 10 nanoseconds, then they're actually treated in a batch and equalized, and they go first 1/n of the time. So it's something that you should be able to see and measure in New Jersey as you try to compete with the firms that you compete with on a particular type of event. And what you should see in New Jersey if you're competing in a three-way competition is you should see 1/3 of the time your packet arriving at the best possible latency at the time. 1/3 of the time it should arrive second after another packet is serialized, and 1/3 of the time it should arrive third. So that's the theory. Of course, it's not exactly that what you will see, because there's jitter on our side. And this jitter, this fast jitter on the radio side, and there is also slow jitter on the propagation side. So propagation conditions change, and there's some jitter added to that. If you look at the jitter that we add, the 25th to 50th centile is of the order of 40 nanoseconds. That's the jitter that we add. So it really doesn't fundamentally change the picture. You should really see 3 peaks. And it should be very easy to read if you're for one particular type of event. You have to condition on the type of event, obviously. But if you have the same competitors, you should see those 3 peaks if you have a 3-way collision. The slow jitter is a completely different type of beast because it's mainly influenced by the change of the index of refraction along the path. And that is a slow variation. The biggest variation is summer to winter. And the large variation is of the order of 150 nanosecond. So it's sizable on this graph, but it's very slow moving. And there's some jitter on the time scale of the hour, which is of the order of 10 to 20 nanosecond at most. So if you do this analysis, you should be careful to rebase the latency of the network to have a local average latency and remove that slow jitter. It's just about filtering. But you should really be able to see that. So that's what we do. And what we do is we explain this because we'd like our clients to be able to analyze the way the market, at least the network performs. So that's the, our little fish market moment. And the other part of the talk is I can't come here and not talk about HF. Because HF is really a red hot topic. So let me say a word about HF. So HF, the fun thing about HF is you can measure the consequences. The other fun thing about HF is that there's a very interesting public debate about it. So a good number of trading firms actually got together and made a proposal to the FCC to provide new rules that would codify the way you can use HF as a point-to-point for long-haul networks. And they did that back in April, and they did that publicly. They filed that with the FCC, and they attracted a ton of negative comments. We commented, and we actually support that effort. We're not sure the parameters that they chose to push for are exactly the right parameters, but we're 100% behind trying to clarify the rules. Because HF has been used for a long time, and it's been used using the current rules that weren't designed exactly for what's being done. There were some set of rules which were trials, market trials, and market trials were designed to improve the technology and do research. And some of the commenters said, you've done your market trial for a while now. You should stop, stop pretending to improve things. And I think that commenter is actually very wrong. As I'll show, the firms that have been using HF have done an incredible amount of work in improving the networks. So how do we measure this? So what you can do is the simple thing. You look at trade-throughs on the CME, and the trade-throughs on the CME have echoes on Eurex, for instance. This will be available for download on our website. Don't worry. The fine prints are really fine. I'm sorry. You have to buy better glasses. So anyway, you can see that. And this is a very interesting shape, because you can definitely see that there are echoes on DAX, and there's a very first sharp peak, then there's a second peak, then a third peak here. There's a bit of a shoulder on the left of the first peak, and you wonder where that shoulder could be. So, but definitely, there's one transmission mode that is much faster than the others. But what's the shoulder on the left? What's the second peak? This is not easy to guess. Obviously, to guess that, you have to study HF transmission. And HF transmission is really wickedly difficult. It changes from hour to hour. It depends on the sun. It depends on many things. It can have many different paths. So what we did is to try to get a sense of the order of magnitude of that is we ran some Monte Carlo simulation for ray tracing. And lo and behold, when you do that, you see that the impact, and it's impossible to see here, but you'll be able to download this. But you can see that the impact of this is the variation in latency that occurs from the different modes of transmission isn't very large. It's of the order of 100 microsecond. And when you looked at the distribution, the shoulder was more of the order of 2 milliseconds. So it's really not explained by the variation in path length in the number of bounces in the HF. It's explained by something else. So what else could explain that? One obvious thing is maybe the private fails on the CME. Maybe that's one thing that can build some of the shoulder on the left of the first very clear peak. So that's private fields. There's some noise over there, and that may be events that are caused by a common source in New Jersey. So they both influence the CME and URX, but they look to come much earlier if you look at it from the CME, and that matches about the 8 millisecond extra. So that is interesting to see. And there's also the regular fiber, which is the best transatlantic plus something like McKay on either side. So that's private fields. So is it really private fields? So the nice thing about private fields is that you can see the impact of private fields on the ES to SPI trade, because that's a very pure trade. Everything goes through microwave. You can really study it easily. So if you superimpose the ES to SPI trade, the same thing, you can, and it's roughly the same size on the horizontal axis, you can see that it does have also a shoulder on the left, which represents the private fields. So you can see that, but it doesn't quite explain, I think, the magnitude of the shoulder on the left. So it's probably private fields plus something else, and that something else, our guess is that it would be something like early detection in the modem, like a modem that actually picks up the signal a little faster than usual. So that's really good. You get to see HF. But what's interesting is HF across the years. So one thing that you can do is you can do the same study in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. And you can see the rapid improvement of the HF networks. So two things are happening there. 2019 is the green curve, and you can see that most of the action was still happening across the fiber means of transmission across the Atlantic. And that has gone down, and the importance of fiber has been reduced a lot. Whereas the importance of HF, so HF is both increasing in volume, like the area under the HF bump is much bigger, but also it's moving to the left. So the latency of the HF is also improving a lot. So to quantify this, you really have to measure the total volume on the left here versus the total volume on the right. And if you arbitrarily pick somewhere at 32 milliseconds, somewhere in the middle, which is a difference between HF and fiber, then you look at the cumulative function, you look at the total area under the graph before and after the dotted line here, and you put this on this other graph over there. You can see that in 2019, the percentage of time HF won for that trade was about 30%, and it's gone up to a staggering 80% last August. So whoever said the HF guys are not improving and are not working and refining their transmission really doesn't understand those market data analyses. I put this here because we've been studying HF forever, and we've always wanted to play in that game, and now we think that we'll start playing that game maybe early next year. And so it's a little bit of a warning that we'll try and compete. Like, it's hard to think that we'll be as good as the guys that have been doing that for 10 years right away, but we'll try and compete. And when we try, we always try to win eventually. So that's it. That's it for the talk. Thanks very much.